we are Team Umbrella. This is our final presentation. Our country is New Zealand. New Zealand vulnerabilities. Lots of species of freshwater and saltwater plants and animals depend on cold water habitats that they have adapted to. Because of climate change, their living environment has changed, so they were suffering due to climate change. The New Zealand government promised to use UNFCCC process from 2013 to 2020. The direct effects of climate change are not a serious threat to agricultural production over the next 75 years in New Zealand. The social effects of climate change might be caused by extremely climate situations like floods. According to the carbon price, which is the cost of producing carbon dioxide, New Zealand will pay more on this aspect. Then the output of economic will decrease. New Zealand opportunities. Due to the glacier runoff, it leads to insufficient steam flow to allow species in marine area around New Zealand to thrive. The political party which supports the country climate change will receive more elections. The opportunity of agriculture in New Zealand are from elevated carbon dioxide levels on biomass yield, absent urban mitigation. The whole society would become more environment friendly since climate change impacts influence people's lives. High-tech manufacturers will be encouraged. Develop clean and new resources will change the environment better. This new market will be encouraged. The Industrial Revolution. New Zealand mainly focused on the agriculture and the livestock products. For example, meat, dairy, wool, and so on. Therefore, there was a few influence from Industrial Revolution. About 18th century, almost all the countries over the globe had been in the Industrial Revolution. However, New Zealand did not really affected by this revolution because it was way far away from the center of the world, which was Europe. So the base of its economic system was only from trading their natural products. Therefore, there was no effects from the Industrial Revolution, and there was no longer industries. As a conclusion, there was no effects to the climate change.
As we know, fossil fuel includes coal, oil, and gas. Coal was the first resources used in New Zealand to generate electricity. At mid-1950s, oil was started to use to generate the electricity. There's more than 400 wells had been drilled, but due to the international oil price increase in 1970s, the New Zealand started to use the gases instead of oil. As we can see in the diagram, China and the U.S. is the biggest fossil fuel consuming country in the world, which has a huge impact to the climate change. But New Zealand is about only 0.1%, which is more. There is about 80% of land covered by plants in the New Zealand, but it still have deforestation happening in New Zealand. People use woods to spawning urban area to build the houses and use the land to do the agriculture. About the 1840s, Europeans began to settle in this land. There's about additional 8 million hectares of forest was destroyed by the colonialism. New Zealand has the biggest forestry carbon sinks in the world because they cover, there's 80% of their land is covered by forests. Colonialism has huge impacts to the New Zealand, although they bring lots of technologies to the New Zealand, which has developed their economics, but but colonialism has huge influence to the New Zealand. because in many colonialism has huge impact to the New Zealand in many aspects, which is contributes to the climate change in New Zealand.
In 2002, New Zealand started to implement Kyoto Protocol. New Zealand's obligations under Kyoto include first submitting the greenhouse gas emission report to UNFCCC. Second, New Zealand publishes and updates the measures to mitigate climate change and facilitate adequate adaptation about climate change to national and regional programs. In order to access to information on climate change and facilitating public awareness, New Zealand started to cooperate with other countries in the world. During the Kyoto period, New Zealand committed to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels, but it's really hard to achieve that level. Here are some examples. New Zealand is the first country to implement a national level emissions trading system, which named ETS, and also includes a forestry component as part of its climate change strategy. ETS can provide lessons for countries like Colombia, Chile, and other countries to learn how to start their climate policies. New Zealand's experience may be useful to countries pursuing national strategies to reduce emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, which named REDD+. The Clean Development Mechanism provides opportunities for New Zealand business. The goods related to climate change and services to developing countries are benefited by some commercial opportunities. Developed countries meet Kyoto Protocol commitments at low cost. New Zealand's overarching mandates are for negotiation of the new climate change agreements is to seek an environmental effective and economically efficient long-term global agreement to meet the object of the UNFCCC, and seek appropriate and effective mitigation actions by all developed countries and by major emitting and advanced developing countries. Commit New Zealand to a fair contribution to global mitigation efforts, securing recognition of its national circumstances. Commit New Zealand to an appropriate level of financial and technology support for developing country mitigation and adaptation actions. And here are more of examples that.
The next I will talk about is the influence of climate change to the vulnerable people. And here are two major populations with vulnerable people. One is indigenous people, and another is women. First, we will talk about is indigenous people. And the first effect on indigenous people is by the increasing temperature, it will also cause the increasing of mosquito. As we all know, mosquito can separate lots of disease, so that will cause a lot of problem to the indigenous people. And there's lots of examples such as river virus. And another things that climate change could influence the indigenous people is that the indigenous people mostly is rely on their own ability to hunt, to farm, to grow things for themselves. So once the climate change, it will definitely change their farm to farm or hunting, which will cause a lot of problem to them. And the second thing I want to talk about is the climate change influence on women. As a gender former and the culture we have, women is a special population and party that we have, which is we treat differently. Especially in some culture, during the night, women cannot go alone. as just some example. And besides those, there are physical reasons that the white women are vulnerable people, because women are twice risky rate to men on disease from mosquito. Furthermore, the pregnant woman has much more risky than non-pregnant women and men. So we need to take care of them. And here's a recommendation for the policies for New Zealand. And the first policy is on the first national government of New Zealand announced the target for net emission. But what we research on internet, we found it's not likely they will achieve that. So our recommendation is they should set the target a little bit higher, so it can be easier to achieve. Okay, and the second policy we want to talk about is voluntary agreement with industry. And the problem we researched online, we found is that not every individuals or firms will follow the agreement very well. So our recommendation is, in order to decrease the gross emission, the New Zealand government should force them to follow the policy. If the firm follow the policy, it will get some benefit, like reducing 0.5% tax. That is just some step we take care of to let everybody follow the policy.
Cost and social analysis. For the first recommendation, we suggest that to achieve the target a little bit lower because it seems too impossible to reach the level in 1990. So we thought that to remain reliable from now or decrease a little bit like 2000. For the second recommendation, we suggest that the government use some force policy to limit the industries to reduce emissions, such as increase the tax rate for emissions. For example, if the company produces more than the average emission quantity, the tax for its income and the cost for emission will be much higher than the company that's lower than the average. On the other hand, if the company does follow the policy or reduce its own emissions, there will be some beneficial policy for it, such as reduce the income tax. There are some relationships between GAMS and our recommendations. For the first GAM, we thought that the larger emissions the first generation life does, the worse the second and third generation does. Therefore, we suggest that balance the different generations and then try to keep developing for long-term plan. For the second GAM, the different groups, rich, the middle, and poorest of people influence the economics differently. Rich people takes the biggest effects to the economics. Actually, if every different level balance their own benefits and profits, there should be an equal result for every single person. For the last GAM, this GAM shows that the climate change could impact the people's lives so quickly. Many people from different trips die by different routes. So in order to keep everyone alive and get more great points, different trips should unite and make decisions together. For our theory of justice, if a company wants to fire people, they must have reason and it should be fair and not relate to their positions. According to the different size of companies to determine how much emissions they are allowed to release. For vulnerable groups, our recommendations might cut the increase of the employment rate and people who are considered into the vulnerable groups and usually easier to lose jobs. But there are some benefits for these vulnerable groups. For indigenous, because the reduce of emissions, the effects from climate change will reduce, so there will be reduced for the bad effects to the local people. For women, because women are easy to get a disease, so when the emissions decrease, the climate change will become better and women's health condition will become better. Children grow up more healthy because children are most likely to be affected by the climate change because the environment then grow up will give a lot of influence to them. Therefore, the better the climate change environment they have, the healthier they are. There are our citation.